Okay, hello and welcome to MSDynamicsWorld.com's Fall 2014 CRM webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us today is Mitch Milam, a veteran Dynamics CRM developer, trainer, and author. Mitch is also a multi-year Microsoft MVP. We are really pleased to have him joining us today to talk to you about what it takes to become a Dynamics CRM technical architect. So we invite you to add your feedback and ask Mitch questions today. You can use the chat block or the Q&A block that you'll see to the right of the slides in the webcast session. And without further delay, I am happy to welcome Mitch Milam. Mitch, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Jason.
Great.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It is a nice, warm day in Dallas, Texas. I hope the world finds you well wherever you may be. And let's get into talking about how to become a dynamic CRM architect. So here's my contact information. If you have any follow-up questions or other things, one of my email addresses. I'm on Twitter. I have several blogs. The Infinite-X is the main technical blog. The rockmycrm.com is more user, and then the other two are just my training and the products that I have. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, follow up, and I'll be happy to get back to you. So the agenda for today is we've got about an hour, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on how many questions we have. I'm going to talk about different rules for becoming an architect, some design considerations, data paths and processes, feature design considerations, typical design decisions, and then I'm going to briefly mention the CRM Architect class that I'm actually running as we speak. So as things come up, please don't hesitate to put a question in the chat box, and I'll try to answer as we go through, or we can wait till the end. Either one works for me. So the main reason that you're here is because you're interested in becoming a CRM architect. At least that's the hope why everybody's here. So where do you start? The very simple answer is you need to learn everything. But Dynamics CRM is a very large product and is becoming more comprehensive as we speak. So learning everything may not be a first choice for everybody, but you have to start somewhere. So what I would advise is pick an item of interest, learn everything there is to know about that, and then continue on from there. So rule number one, if it was easy, anyone could do it. And that is kind of a joke, but it is also true. There are more people now in Dynamics CRM than when I first started. When I first started, there were a handful of people putting out blog posts and answering forum posts and things like that. The amount of information that is now out there is just absolutely amazing. Back in 2005, 2006, when I was first started my blog, I wrote stuff because I found things that people didn't have posted anywhere else. And by the way, if you have a blog, if you don't have a blog, you should have a blog. If you do not blog and you have a blog, you should be writing stuff because everyone finds out things that no one else has seen. So you need to share that information with everyone else. Okay? So here are the basics. First off is education. Now, I'm not speaking of formal education or training. I'm really talking about educating yourself. So the best way that you can do things is just by doing them. So, like again, pick a topic, learn what there is to learn about the topic, pick another one, and go so forth and so on. There are many areas within Dynamics CRM that you could focus on. I mostly focus on development and architecture and training. You might focus on marketing or the social listening or case management, whatever is of interest to you, whatever you do on a daily basis, get good at that and then find something else. You also need to have understanding of the process. How does CRM work within your environment, within other environments? How was it designed? How does that design affect how people use it, etc.? And the last few things here are practice. You practice, you practice, you practice. Okay? So nothing ever beats practice. You can read all the books you want, but until your finger touches the keyboard, maybe they don't make sense. So that's number one. Go. So practice makes perfect. In the book Outliers, author Malcolm Gladwell postulated the theory that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert in a field. And he uses Bill Gates and a few other people like that who started out very young in life and worked all the time to get where they are. Now, I'm not advising you spend 10,000 hours working on Dynamics CRM because that's just a lot of time, but you are going to have to put a lot of things into this. So again, practice makes perfect. So again, find something you want to work on, do it. You'll be surprised how much you pick up, and once you start learning one thing, it will lead to something else and something else. So product knowledge. You need to know and understand the products and the capabilities. First and foremost. Again, the product does a lot of things. They have moved the cadence up to where they're shipping 2 updates a year or more. And what that means is the product as we know it today is not going to be the product that we know 6 months from now. So when you're working with Dynamics CRM, you really have to pay attention to what is being done to the product, how they're changing it, are they adding features, are they removing features, are they changing features, because quite honestly, these days, you start a conversation with someone, it's like, well, it did work like this, but let's go see if it works that way now. Because it could have changed in the past 6 months. Well, there was an update roll-up. Oh, there's a new version. Oh, CRM Online works differently than CRM Premise does. Let's find this out. Number 2 is you need to know what you don't know. This is better said than practiced, of course, for most people. But you really need to know what you don't know. And by that I mean, okay, you have your product knowledge, you work on things, you need to know the areas you don't have any clue about, and then you focus on those. And the last thing here is you need to know where to go to find help, okay? There's no reason in the world these days to beat your head up against the wall. Again, there are tons of free information packets out there, either in blogs or white papers from Microsoft, or the forums can answer questions and get a variety of valid answers back. The information is out there for you to find. You just need to look. So quite honestly, I would advise you, before you ask the question, go look for the answer. I see a lot of places people will post a question, and the answer is so simple that if they had done one Google search, they would have found that answer to the question. So know where to find the help. It could be as simple as typing a search in, or it could be going to a forum or finding a person's blog that gives out good information you like. Rule number 2, find the best answer to the question, not necessarily the right answer. The thing that I love about Dynamics CRM the best, and what has really made me a fan over the years, is there is not always one way to do things. In more cases than not, there are 5 ways to do something. But given the situation, given the customer, given the business requirements, one of those 5 answers is going to be better than the other 4. It is your job as an architect to find the right answer to the question. So let's talk about Dynamics CRM features for a second here. Much of Dynamics CRM can be configured. Before you get into the customization part, you can actually make changes to the system through mere configuration, various dialogues, etc. Follow that with customization. So you can add new entities, you can add fields, you can modify the forms, etc., etc. You need to know when, why, and where you should use one versus the other. If you come from a development background, many times you're more likely to go to the development route. Well, oh, I can write an application to do this. Well, maybe the product already did that. You just didn't know it. And again, it goes back to education. You need to know when you should configure something versus when you should customize something. I mentioned this briefly earlier, but Dynamics CRM is not just customer relationship management anymore. They have a social listening component. They have Dynamics marketing. They have mobile device support across the board for all the 3 platforms, iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. So it's not just CRM. It's something else tied into it. You need to understand, does the thing that Microsoft added this year or this month or this quarter, does that tie into something that my customer can use? When I say my customer, I'm talking to both a consultant that may be on the phone as well as the people who work in the enterprise level whose customer is actually their boss or their boss's boss or the people they work with. So the internal customer versus the external customer. They're still your customer. So you need to understand where all the pieces fit today. And again, it's getting more complicated. It's more stuff out there than you can probably consume in an average day. So Many places, when we start with the actual customization of CRM, we have to think about a few things. We have client technologies to discuss. So we can put in HTML web pages. We can customize our forms with JavaScript. Those are like general things. And then we have CRM-specific things. So we can modify the navigation of the sitemap. We can modify the ribbon and the command bar on forms, etc. We can create business process flows. We can create portable business logic. All of these are tools that are either configured or customized, depending on the situation and the technology, that modify the client for the user. And again, the idea of modifying the client for the user is to make their job easier. Okay? So the idea is you modify the client to fit the situation. So when we get into the server technologies, which is generally the stuff behind the scenes, we have some general technology bases that we have to work with. So SQL Server is, of course, the top of the list because 95% or more of Dynamics CRM is inside of the database. So if you're on premise, having working knowledge of how SQL works, where the things are stored, that is of immeasurable help. If you're in the CRM Online world, it's a little bit more difficult because all of that is hidden from you, but it still helps to understand how things are connected. SharePoint is how we store documents in many cases within Dynamics CRM, so knowing where those pieces are and how they work and interact with CRM is very important. And finally, SQL Server reporting services. That's how we create reports. So if you want a report that is actually a physical report, this is how we do it. So understanding how to create reports, how to modify them, when you use the wizard versus having to create something by hand, or when you combine the two. All of these are things that you need to have at least a comprehension of, if not a working understanding of. So when we get into server technologies that are specific to CRM, I think the top of the list is probably workflows. Workflows are a very easy way to add value to the CRM system. When would you use a workflow? When do you need to create a plugin that does something? When do you need to create a custom workflow activity? Sorry, I got a spelling there. A custom workflow activity that will fit into our workflow to give the business user a more comprehensive workflow design experience. And then finally, everything in the Dynamics CRM SDK is accessed via web service. What are the capabilities there? What do we have to do? And again, three of these things are actually very developer-oriented. You don't have to be a developer to understand these things, but at least you need to understand them. That's the idea. You don't have to do them, but you need to know about how to do them. We'll cover that more in a minute. Rule number 3 in my book is technology does not fix process issues. You cannot code your way out of a bad situation. It just makes it worse in most cases. So the idea here is if you have a process that's broken, you must first fix the process before you can do something with technology to help either automate the process or supplement the process. Once you get kind of past the actual technologies involved, so that'd be the client stuff and the server stuff and where all the pieces fit together and how they work together, the next thing you have to worry about is data. Because, as you know, people put data into CRM in order to be able to get data out of CRM. So the data paths and the processes those paths are involved with are very important. So the first thing we need to know is, where does data enter the system? Where does it stop along the way? And what is its final destination? So in most cases, data enters the system via keyboard. So a user types it in. But that's not always the case. Maybe we have an integration system set up via Scribe with our legacy system, or maybe it's GP. Maybe we have a connector. Maybe we have some third-party product that pulls data off of our website. Say maybe Silverpop has a thing where they will push leads directly into our CRM system. Things like that. Those are all data entry points. We need to understand where the data comes from so that we can take action when it gets inside CRM. Where does it stop along the way? Now, this may sound like a very strange thing, but there are cases we'll cover here in a second where the data as it gets into CRM is not the way it stays in CRM. So, for instance, we have a quote that we create inside CRM. Well, the moment we hit the save button or we activate the quote, it gets picked up by a plugin and it gets pushed over into GP. So that's going out of CRM. Okay, and then what happens to it next? Does it then turn into the situation where it comes back into CRM through one of the integration paths we talked about earlier? Does it change entities? That's another thing that happens occasionally. So the final destination. So we get the data in, we do something with it either inside the system or outside the system, and then finally the data ends up where it's meant to be. So where is that process stopping? Does it stay in the record it was created in? In other words, if we have a quote, does it stay in a quote, or does it get converted to an order? Does that order get converted to an invoice? Does a lead get converted into a contact? So here's an example of that. So with CRM 2013, when you qualify a lead, the next thing that you see on your screen is an opportunity, in most cases, unless you've changed something. That wasn't always the case. Prior to 2013, what would happen is you got displayed a dialogue, and you could make an optional choices about what happened next. Did it create a contact? Did it create an account? Did it create an opportunity? Well, that option was removed from you. So now it creates an opportunity, but I've worked with many organizations where an opportunity is not something that they do. So now what do? We need to qualify the lead, but we don't want an opportunity. That means that we have to kind of manufacture our own process so that we handle the process ourselves and we don't use what's built into Dynamics CRM. But again, in many places, that's exactly what they want. They are converting a lead into an opportunity and a contact and account. So you need to know, are these things that we need to do or not? I also mentioned the quote order invoice process. So within CRM, unless you change it, and again, not everybody uses quotes, orders, and invoices within CRM, but some people do. The idea of the quote order invoice is not to turn Dynamics CRM into an accounting system. In most cases, what you're trying to do is you're trying to provide a record of transaction that a person using CRM can see. That's the idea. So yes, you can create quotes that can be generated, sent to the customer, either by the built-in methods or through a third party. But in many cases, what you're doing is you're actually going to present data to a customer using a different system. Maybe you have GP plugged in, and you actually create the things there. So this is a case where it really depends on how your organization is working, what accounting system you have, and then how the interaction is actually going to end up. The final example here I mentioned is we have a prospect who fills out a contact me form on our website, and we need to get that into Dynamics CRM. I can have done this in about 5 or 6 different ways, from writing a custom plugin to deploying a third party, again, like Silverlight or Silverpop I mentioned earlier, or Click Dimensions, or CRM Innovation has a product. There are all kinds of things out there that will help you get this information into CRM. The idea with this is you want to be able to cause the minimum amount of friction on the prospect, while at the same time providing value to the salesperson within your organization. It sounds like a very simple thing, but a lot of people still take their contact form and have it emailed to them. And then a person will have to take that information, have to type it into a new lead, have to qualify it, whatever they may do. Whereas any of the solutions that I mentioned before can show the data directly into CRM. A workflow can start up. We can email the prospect back. We can automatically assign the new lead to a salesperson depending on territory, whatever it might be. But you get the richness of the capabilities of automation within Dynamics CRM rather than just a plain old email that somebody has to redo. So the idea here is you need to know which of the processes you can automate, which of the processes you have to rely on third parties to provide a solution, and then how all that ties together. So part of being an architect in Dynamics CRM is knowing where all the pieces are and how they can fit together to produce you a solution. Okay, rule number 4, I mentioned this earlier, but it's really not important that you be able to do everything, but it is important to know how it's done. I can't tell you the number of people I've had in my training classes over the years especially the developer training classes, who are not developers. Never wrote a line of code, would never write a line of code. What they wanted to know and why they were in the class is, how do my developers do their work? So when I ask them to do something, I want to know what it is I've actually asked them to do. So we need a plug-in that will automatically assign a record to a team instead of a user. Very common scenario these days. And, you know, there are all ways around that too. The idea is, okay, I now need to have one of my developers do this. I need to know what I'm talking to them about so that they understand that I really actually know, you know, I can't do it, but I know what it does. So it's very important to understand how these things fit. And again, it's not that you need to be a developer, but you need to know what the developers go through. You need to know the tools that they use. You need to know the process, the terminology, things like that. So let's talk a minute about feature design considerations. So depending on your environment is what your capabilities will be and what you have access to. So CRM on-premise, you can pretty much anything you want because it's your environment. You have direct access to SQL, you have back-end data systems that you can probably connect to, etc. If you're in CRM Online, you're pretty much locked down to what you can see via the website. So certain things you can't do at all. Like you see, again, you can't access SQL directly. Everything has to be done through the CRM SDK. And partner hosted is very similar to that. You're probably going to be working in a more restricted environment than on-premise, and your abilities are going to be what you've negotiated with the partner. So these environmental questions are what leads you down the path of choosing a solution to a problem. So the first question that comes up is the one of immediacy. So when something happens after the user does something, does the user need to see it happen immediately? Or can they wait till we press the save button? And the answer to this question is either going to be JavaScript for point 1 or a plugin for point 2. And the reason why this is a big consideration is actually the third question. Do we have an outside application such as a web portal or integration with GP that needs to interact in the same way with this process? For instance, I have a custom entity that has fields that are calculated when the user types numbers in. Well, does that user need to see the total summarized as they enter the numbers, or are they okay clicking the save button and having the screen refresh and having that number available to them? Okay, so that's the first question. The second question is, if I'm adding data from outside of the CRM web user interface, does that calculation need to take place? That's a plug-in versus JavaScript. It's a plug-in because I'm coming from outside of the user interface. JavaScript will only work when the CRM web interface is deployed, or Outlook, or any of the other CRM interfaces. But maybe I need to have this happen at the back end. If it does have to happen on the back end, and no matter where the data comes from, that has to be a plug-in. So we would have a situation where it's actually possible to have JavaScript produce one result for the user typing things in, while a plugin at the back end does the calculations as well. I've actually done that. So I actually implemented two technologies to solve the same problem because of their business requirements. On demand. So if you're doing something that happens behind the scenes, so this would be a server-based operation, does the user ever need to make a decision about when that action should happen? So the question here is related to a plugin. So a plugin is designed and attached to a specific what they call message, such as create or update or delete of a record, of a type of record. And it happens every single time that action happens. But if we ever get into a situation where we need to be able to allow the user to make the determination when we should execute the action, that gives us only really one possibility, which is running a workflow. Our workflow code can be encapsulated, or our plugin code, excuse me, can be encapsulated inside of a custom workflow activity, which is a type of plugin, and that custom workflow activity can be called from our workflow that the user starts. So we create a workflow, make it on demand. which is a manual operation. In other words, they have a record or records open. They click on Run Workflow. They see a record that a workflow has been set for on demand. They can choose it, and it will run against the record selected. So that's how that happens. Excuse me here. Okay, sorry. Clicking is working funny. Okay, so let's talk about a few typical design decisions here. So as long as I have been in the IT business, which is a long time, we've always had the quandary of, do we build it or do we buy it? It really depends on your situation. If you have 0 developers, you're probably going to be in a buying mode. If you have 50 developers, you're probably going to be in a building mode. That's just how things work. But it is important to know when you need to do one versus the other. Can I spend $500 and get a package to do something that would take a developer a week to do? To me, that sounds like a great deal, because a week of developer time is probably worth more than $495 in most places. Maybe not in yours. I don't know. But again, if I have a developer who's just sitting around twiddling her thumbs because she has nothing to do, building it may be a better option. Again, it really truly depends on the situation, and you have to understand what that situation is and when to employ it. So part of this knowing how things work and knowing about things is knowing the development process for your customer. So how do you do development? So waterfall is the probably oldest development method, and the idea here is we develop a specification, we get approval of specification, we spend a year creating the results of the specification, then we roll that out. And then what we find is 6 months ago, the process changed, so now we have half of a solution that doesn't fit anymore. So we have to go back and change that. So to get around some of those things, a new way of doing things called Agile development was what was developed. And Agile is more what they call iterative development. So we take a feature set, we develop that feature set, we roll out the feature set, then we go back and do it again and again and again. There are some variations of it. We do Agile, but we do something else. Or we have Scrum, which is the type of Agile, and we have merged Scrum and Waterfall, which they call now Scrummerfall. So the development process will 100% guide your ability to deploy solutions. So again, if you are in Agile development methodology where you're doing iterative development, you can roll things out really quickly. If your company does only waterfall, where you're going to roll out everything at once, it's going to dictate when you put features in, how you're doing your testing, and then the whole rollout versus training thing. The next question you have to understand is, what resources do we have available? Who is my team? What do they do? What can they do? What can they learn? Do I have a budget to get external consultants in to help me fill in a hole in our team? All these things kind of have to be understood. Now, these may not be decisions that you personally have to make or find answers to, but you at least need to know if you're going to be in trouble or not. Because you can create a solution or a set of requirements that your people can't do. And you have to present that like, okay, we have to have this done, and we don't have people to do it. So that's something to be aware of. So speaking of developers, rule number 5, throwing developers at a problem is seldom the answer. Back when I first started off, there was an old axiom in the software business that you would never have a development team larger than you could fit into a VW Beetle to go for pizza, which is about 4 people, 5 if they're skinny. I still think that is a pretty good benchmark. Again, it depends on your situation. But having more people working on a problem really and truly just complicates the communication. And without proper and good communication, you can become lost quite clearly. Okay, so something to keep in mind. So let's talk about some design scenarios. So let's have, and this part I could love some interaction with if you guys feel like commenting. So we have a requirement to automatically assign a unique ID number to an account and a contact when they're created. Who can tell me how they would do that? Anybody? Nobody?
Oh, I'm seeing one answer here. Pre-creating a plugin is one response that came through to me.
Okay. Yep, plugins work. What else would work?
Oh, there's another answer there. Downloading a free plugin from Don.
Marianne, is automatic based on system entity, a system setting? No, it's not, actually. Not for contact or account. Add-on package, yeah, another plug-in. Auto numbering by an ISV solution. Oops. Real-time workflow. All these are good. Perfect. Justine, why would you not use existing and then upload? Not really sure what you're talking about. If you're generating brand new customers, you don't know the number, so you have to give it a new number. Okay, Doug, good point there. Yep. Is it does it need to be seen when the form is opened or when the record is saved? That actually comes up quite frequently. It's kind of an interesting point there. Good job. So the issue is, so you're creating a new account. So you got a call center rep, person calls in, new customer, you start typing their name in. We need a customer ID right then because we have to give that information to them. The problem therein is when is that information recorded to the database? If we simply open the form up and give them a new ID, that ID has not been reserved in the database. Therefore, you could possibly have an issue of duplicate IDs because somebody else opened up a screen and got that number at the same time, and they saved their version, and then you save your version, and you'll probably get an error because now you have the wrong number. Okay? So it really depends. So the biggest thing here is it totally depends on, one, the amount of data you're creating, and then the second thing is it depends on, again, this immediacy thing. So I have done this in the past through a JavaScript call to a web service, a stored procedure, that web service actually called the stored procedure. I've done it on load. I've done it on save. I've done it in a plugin. All of these things are all well and truly valid answers. Again, it depends on the situation. Throughput is actually the biggest determining factor here. In certain of these, you can actually accidentally end up with a duplicate value. If you have very high throughput, if you don't immediately write back out, and so it depends how you do it. Either you can get the maximum value or have a counter you're incrementing. One of those two things is generally the technique. So it really kind of depends. So again, the thing you watch out for is having a lot of data. This is where testing is absolutely paramount. And it seems like a very simple thing, but you end up with two companies that have the same account number, and you see what kind of problems you get into. Does that make sense? Okay, let's do another scenario here. So we have all of our accounts partitioned amongst our sales representatives because you know salespeople and they don't like to share, and we don't want people looking at my accounts, and I don't want to go look at their accounts, and I don't want to know how much anybody's making and all the things people say. So we would like to secure people's account access to pretty much only things they own. Okay, that's a security role thing, not a big deal at all. Now the problem herein is we have inside sales reps that are working with the outside sales rep who physically owns the account. We need to be able to share that account with the inside sales reps that are assigned to that outside sales rep so that they can see what is happening with, quote unquote, their customers. Okay? So I need to automatically share an account amongst a group of people. So how would I do that? Anybody?
So there's one answer that came in on the chat.
Okay.
You should
create a team of sales reps. That's the first part. Do it with a plugin, workflow plugin, inside of a team, create a team. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Anybody have any idea about a specific CRM 2013 feature?
There's one that you're not seeing there that says workflow to assign to a team.
Yeah, see that? Access teams, yay. Grippa got it first. I think I pronounced it right. John right after her. Yep. So, okay. So we have 2013, we have access teams, which is an automated sharing mechanism. Prior to that, we would have done a plugin. We could have done a workflow as well, but probably a plugin just to make it safe. So anytime that an account is created or updated, we automatically make sure that the shares for that account are properly set up. Access teams in 2013 work in much the same way. Very good. You guys are paying attention. Okay. Final thing we're going to do here, our scenario is we have a top customers report that the CEO would like on her desk at the beginning of each month. And we would like to see our top 25 customers by revenue. How do we do that? There was a pony for the first person to answer. Oh, there we go.
Oh, we have Olaf that you didn't see again, scheduled report.
Okay, schedule report. First, using a graph, SRS. Get the lift of dashboard. Okay, James, let's not get crazy here, okay, dude?
There's a couple more in the chat there on dashboard. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, you guys are on top of your game today. So you picked up the thing here. I didn't actually say in the requirement the word report, did I? I called it a top customers report, but nowhere did I actually say the CEO needed a piece of paper. Now, physically, I did say that out loud, but if you were reading the thing, it didn't say I want a report. The CEO would like a list of their top 25 customers by revenue at the beginning of each month. But as a good number of you mentioned, why don't we display that to them every day of the month? And then just have their assistant go in at the beginning of each month and say, open up the page and, hey, there's your dashboard, there's your top 25 customers. Oh, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so very good. So it all comes back to what is a report. Now, a report could be a lot of things. A report could be a piece of paper that you generate with SSRS. It could be a Word document. It could be an Excel worksheet. It could be a dashboard. All of these things are technically reports. So it's up to you to kind of filter out what they say versus what they mean, because there are times, and I know no one's ever run into this but me, but people actually say one thing and want something else. Okay? So that's how you deal with that. So again, look for what they're after, not what they can say. So very good. We need to have these people back more often, Jason. Okay, now, I thought it was kind of late when I created this a few weeks ago. So anyway, this may not apply to everybody, but there is a point in time where you just have to walk away from a situation because you cannot fit that square peg into a round hole. And that's just the way things are. So I just thought I would mention that. So, any questions on anything that we've covered?
As we're waiting for questions to come in, let me just note, I did type this in, but if you send a chat, which you're free to do, just make sure it goes to all panelists so that Mitch can't see that come in.
Nothing?
Mitch, there were a couple people asking questions earlier on about access to today's slides and information. Is there a way that you prefer to make that available?
Yes, I can send you a follow-up. I don't give out the slides per se, but I have kind of a summary of everything. I can send it out to you, Jason, and you can email it to everybody who attended. How about that? And of course, you got the recording. You got the recording. That's even better.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
So,
question, Mitch, that just came in.
Yeah. So, James, if sorry, let me go back here for a second. Okay, I have a series of newsletters, for lack of a better term, called Knowledge Bits, and they're free. And what it is what I call different channels. I have one on development, I have one on training, architecture, things like that. And then basically what happens is you sign up and it emails you once per day. So it's my blog address / knowledge bits - sign up. So that in there has a thing I call training strategies, which I kind of cover a handful of things that I've learned. The basic thing with the users is to keep things simple. Don't give them more than they can handle. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but real and truly, they're busy. They're not going to remember a lot. A really good technique I like is lunch and learn, as they call it. So bring some users into the conference room or whatever. Bring in sandwiches or pizza or whatever it is you eat where you are. Feed them. Have somebody talk about a topic, or maybe a small handful, maybe three fingers worth of topics, and then basically just make sure that you get to the meat of the problem there, and just say, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's something to know, and then you do that on a frequent basis. Kim, we'll do that in just a second. I'll put to the end. So the idea here is that you educate them in small bites. That's the idea, because again, Dynamics CRM is a huge product. It does a lot of things, and once you start customizing it, you can do a lot more. So it's going to be confusing. It's a lot of places to go. It's a lot of things to click on, things like that. So you really just need to break it down into digestible pieces. Maybe have a newsletter that you email out on every month. Maybe have an internal blog. That's another great one I need to add to my my training strategies, and just have something where people don't feel alone. Another great strategy that I like is have power users. So train up some people more than others, some people that have basically people who do stuff better than other people, or maybe they're more passionate about it, to have them teach people how to do stuff, so that you, the IT staff, is not overwhelmed by everyone, because in most places the IT staff is outnumbered by users by X factor. Who knows what it would be? Let me see what else we got there. Cripple, yeah. So soft skills are very important, because again, you need to understand how people work, and that's kind of a side thing I like, just kind of watch people and how they react to things. But yeah, you need to be able to understand how people work, what they're looking for. The biggest thing is, everybody has a problem that they are personally working with. So understanding what their issues are, why they're, a lot of times, and this kind of gets all psychological on it, but a lot of times people are the way they are for a specific reason. And if they're passionate about a specific feature or whatever, maybe it's because of something that they do that's causing them a lot of pain. Okay, it's real simple to think about, but yeah, there's a lot of things that, okay, we're doing a job over and over again, and it's the wrong job, and nobody will listen to me about fixing it. So maybe it's an opportunity to come in and fix things that people have been complaining about for a while. So being able to articulate that and not cause too many ruffled feathers, that's a very, very, very valuable skill. Okay, James asked a trick question, so let me try to address that. As a non-technical resource, how would we be best placed to gauge dev time for certain requirements at a requirement gathering stage? In all honesty, that's something that you'd have to work with the developers on. They are the only people who can tell you how long it's going to take. Okay, so the way that we used to work a long time ago, and I probably still do this now, I don't even think about it. If you get a requirement from a developer, you can multiply it by a magic number, 1.5, 2, 3. That'll probably be closer to the real amount of time it's going to take. It also depends if they've ever done it before. If they've never done it, you add a lot of time. Okay, but unfortunately, the main thing here is, as a non-developer, you cannot tell a developer how long something's going to take. That just doesn't work. Okay, and on top of that, it pisses everybody off. Okay, so you got to be careful there. So really and truly, what you're working with is, you have to work as a team. That's the idea. There's no I in team. So work as a team to figure out, here's a requirement, how long do you think it's going to take? And over time, and it will take time, you will develop a relationship with these people, and you will both understand when Billy Joe Bob says it's going to take me 6 hours, it's actually going to take him 10 hours. Okay, so you'll mentally or figuratively add extra time to it to make sure that you're covered as far as your soft time at the end. Okay. Documentation walkthroughs are really good. If you can record videos. Now, recording videos is much more difficult than it sounds. I am a perfectionist, and I cannot tell you the words that most of my recordings end with while I am working. They're not, let's just say it's adult language, because I'll be in the middle of something and then I'll screw something up and have to redo it. What I would recommend is not record 30 minutes. I would record 5 minutes. So again, it goes back to that lunch and learn. The short topic wins. So what you do is you grab a topic, you show it, you talk about it. If you want to document, that's fine, but you do one topic. You don't say, this is how you qualify a lead, and then spend 3 hours talking about it. Nobody's going to sit through that or read through that. Anderson, I try to blog a little bit on my blog about stuff. Other than that, I'm not really positive. Sashin, record by one team only, that gets kind of complicated. Not really sure if I have a great answer. CRM really doesn't do record level security like that without a lot of work. Okay, Bill, change documentation. Oh boy, that is just a 4-hour conversation in the making right there. That is 100% process dependent. Okay. I don't really have a great answer because nobody does things the same way. That's the problem. So the way that I do it is not going to be the way that you or your company does it. So the main thing is everybody needs to understand what they're doing. Then somebody kind of has to be, if you can, it again, depends on the situation. If you can have people in charge of like a feature or a set of features or a technology like workflows or plugins or something, that helps a lot. I know it's not always possible. But the biggest thing is, like for like dependent workflows, what will happen is if you do something behind the scenes, it will break your workflow. Hopefully you will find that out in testing, not in production. Well, how you perform a requirement analysis, that really depends on how much you're trying to do. I mean, the basic question is, what do you want done? How's it supposed to work? When do you want it? And then find out who has to work on it, and then find out how to fit it into your plan for changes. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So,
Mitch, there was a request for you to repost that URL again.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get to it. Yeah. So I do have a class. I just want to mention I'm actually in the middle of it right now. So we started 3 weeks ago. It's like a college class. It's 6 weeks. We go twice a week for 2 hours at a time. This is the kind of stuff we learn. It's like going to business school where you have lots of stuff where you're doing a scenario-based thing. So we take a technology and then go through scenarios. Just like those 3 scenarios we covered earlier, that's kind of what we did. So if anybody's interested in something like that, it's going to be next year before we can have another class because the holidays are coming up. I got a baby on the way, so it's just not going to happen until January, February timeframe. But again, if you have any questions, just let me know. There's that knowledge bit sign up again, or you can go out to any of my blogs, and there should be a link to the sign up on all of them. So again, I would recommend that. Like I said, it's basically just a series thing. Some of them I don't have fully fleshed out. Some are more complicated than I expected them to be. But it's just little tidbits that I came up with that I don't always have on my blog because they're just kind of short. Some of them are not short, some of them are. So what other questions do we have? I know we covered a whole lot of information.
There's a question about how non-technical people can help assess their gauge dev time.
Okay, I talked about that.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, if not, we can start wrapping up, maybe make a final call here. So the session is recorded. We'll be sending you an update as soon as that's available. Do not see any. Oh, here's.
Olaf, are you talking about Unified Modeling Language? ULM? Or UML? I don't know what UML is. What is that? Yeah. No, not really, because CRM does all that by itself. So you're just adding on to that. So if you try to model CRM's data model, you would end up with this. Put it this way: I think there's a tool that was part of the SDK that would create a Visio diagram out of the CRM object model by reading the database. It would basically be about 40 square feet of paper. So you really don't do that because you have to create the fields and entities really by hand. You can do it programmatically, but it's actually faster to do them by hand, believe it or not. I don't really think it applies, quite honestly. Okay.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there.
Okay.
We're going to end the recording. Mitch, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thanks to everyone on the call for your questions and your attention. You'll see a survey when you close out. Please take about 30 seconds to fill that out. We always appreciate the feedback. Thanks and have a great day.